44 years, let's just cut the crap and get on with it. Hi guys, so before we get into it, let me just quickly address the issue of spoilers. So I can appreciate that this is a new movie. I'm going to keep this spoiler free at least for the first 3 or 4 minutes, and then I will put up a very clear title card saying that we're moving into the spoiler section. So if you just want to get my very, very quick thoughts on the movie, but you don't want to have the plot ruined, then you're safe to remain here for at least a short while, and then I'll let you know when you have to toddle off. So I went to watch this last night at the cinema. Let me say as well, I'm a massive Halloween fan. This is my favourite horror franchise of all time, but I hadn't really been looking forward to this one that much. I kind of felt very flat at the end of Halloween Kills. The last 15-20 minutes of that film were quite disappointing for me. So on the run-up stretch to the release of Halloween Ends, I wasn't really thinking about it that much. I only watched one of the trailers once, I think, and that didn't really excite me either. And then I found out what the story was going to be for Halloween Ends, and again, didn't really do a lot for me. It was only really loyalty that got my legs moving down to the cinema last night. But once the film started, I was into it from the first frame. I enjoyed this pretty much all the way through. It was definitely better than what I thought it was going to be, and I felt quite emotional at the end, actually. Just the realisation that, yeah, this is definitely Jamie Lee's last Halloween film. She's been playing this role a ridiculous length of time, 44 years. I mean, that's longer than I've been alive, and I felt the weight of that emotionally as I was walking out of the cinema. It was quite a weird sort of feeling for me. This film is very different, by the way. You probably already heard that it's a very divisive film. I mean, I will probably drag my heels putting this video out. You would have heard already that this is a very polarising film. There are a lot of people who really like it. There are a lot of people who absolutely hate it and have been letting rip on social media. It's so different from the normal type of Halloween film. I mean, this is different on the scale of Friday the 13th Part 5 with Roy, or Jason Goes to Hell, or even Season of the Witch. There was actually a moment in this where it occurred to me that Season of the Witch feels more like a Halloween film than Halloween Ends, which is really weird because Michael Myers is in Halloween Ends. He's not in Season of the Witch. I can't tell you whether you're more likely to be on the side that loves this film or whether you're going to be on the side that hates it. I think if you're the sort of person who has a very narrow field of vision when it comes to horror, i.e. you're mostly just into the slasher films, the violent films, maybe that will make you more likely to not like this. Whereas if you watch a very broad amount of different types of horror film, you know, if you're the sort of person who watches Halloween one night, The Conjuring the next night, Little Shop of Horrors the night after that, and then the night after that you might watch a completely different film that's not even horror. So if you watch a lot of different things, then maybe you'll be more willing to accept just how different Halloween Ends is. But honestly, I've no idea whether you'll like it, in all honesty. But I enjoyed it. Personally, I thought it was really good. I'm going to give it a very good score at the end of this review. If you want to skip all the spoilers and just see what score I'm going to give it, then just fast forward to like 30 seconds from the end. I'm probably done with the spoilers by that point. But speaking of spoilers, it's that time. So in this one, we've got a copycat killer in Haddonfield called Corey, and Myers himself doesn't fully come into the film until like the last 15-20 minutes. So they've gone all Roy Burns on us. But I don't mind that as a concept. I always liked the Roy Burns idea. I just didn't like how they executed it in Friday the 13th Part 5. I'm surprised, though, that they've done this with the final Halloween film, you know, the closing chapter in the trilogy. You'd think with this being definitively the last one, they would have gone surely for a more traditional Halloween film, more of a crowd pleaser, something that everybody can get behind. You'd think that if they were going to do something like this, they would have put it as the middle chapter, a quick break in the action, and then we go back to a proper Myers film. So it's a little bit odd in that regard. I mean, can you imagine if Friday the 13th, the final chapter, was the Roy Burns one, and basically they would have said, okay, we're going to finish this thing off now, but it turns out that the axe in the head has actually killed Jason, and we're going to bring in this guy called Roy for our final film. I suspect that had they done that, the final chapter would not have the amazing reputation that it does today. If the Roy Burns film escapes too much criticism, it's because it's in a kind of no man's land in the timeline. It's squeezed in between 4 and 6. If you don't want to watch it, you can literally just skip from 4 to 6 and just enjoy the Tommy story as a 2-film thing. It doesn't have to be a 3-film thing. If you don't want to have anything to do with Roy Burns. The problem with Halloween Ends, though, is that you can't really avoid this Corey storyline if you want to watch this timeline, because it's literally right there in the climax. It's the final film. How can you really avoid it? You can't just end this thing with Halloween Kills. You've got to watch this one. So it was definitely brave doing what they've done with this. I'll tell you that. My only genuine criticisms about this film, though, are in relation to character. It is a character-driven horror film, so I was absolutely concentrating a lot on the various arcs and storylines that were going on. And I've got 2 things about this film that bug me when it comes to character. Firstly, Laurie. Now, I did enjoy Laurie in this film for the most part. This is definitely the best Laurie since the original for me. It was absolutely delightful to see her happy and just enjoying her life for at least half the movie. You know, she's not stood around with a bottle of Jack Daniels or hiding behind a steel front door with a shotgun in hand and traps all around her. She's not being all paranoid and annoying and spoiling her relatives' birthday parties or anything like that. So I did enjoy a lot of Laurie in this, but there's one thing about her that I didn't like, and that's the fact that she guesses that Corey is the killer just from looking in his eyes. Bullshit. And it does kind of affect a later scene as well when she surprises him by firing off those couple of shots. I feel like they should have left that as a complete surprise and make it a revelation that she's been suspicious about him up to this point, but not quite sure. But just having her be absolutely 100% sure, seemingly, that he is the killer all the way through the film, I didn't buy that one bit. My other complaint when it comes to character is to do with Alison. Now, I really enjoyed the Alison character in 2018. I thought she got swallowed up by Halloween Kills a little bit. Maybe there were just too many characters and situations going on in that film for her to really shine. But in this one, she really comes to the forefront again, and this is possibly her best film out of the trilogy. It's either this one or the first one. But there's one thing about this, again, that just kind of holds the character back a little bit. I just don't believe that she would go for this Corey kid. It's nothing to do with looks. I think visually they look like they're possibly in the same league. I don't know. But I just don't buy that Alison would go for this kid based on just how he acts. I mean, this guy gives off so many warning signs that he's not in the right place for a relationship. It's hard for me to believe that Alison would go for him, to be honest. If she was like a 17, 18-year-old girl still at school, then okay, you know, girls at that age, they'll go for anybody, and to hell with the consequences, to hell with the warning signs. But when you're talking about a woman clearly in her mid-20s by this point, or heading towards her mid-20s, and she's got failed relationships already behind her, I kind of feel like she would probably be looking for more of a safe bet by this point in her life. So I feel like maybe they should have had this be a friendship rather than a relationship, and maybe have it so that Alison is sort of interested in possibly taking it further if he stays the course and impresses her over a long period. But this just diving into a very, very quick relationship, given the sort of behaviour signals that he gives off, not for me. So let's talk a little bit about Michael Myers. I love the way he's depicted in this. I saw a funny comment on Facebook where somebody was really laying into the film, and they said something like, I don't come to a Halloween film to only see 15 minutes of Myers, it's ridiculous. I thought to myself, you know what, you probably actually don't get more than 15 minutes of Myers in any Halloween film, because if you add up the seconds he's on screen, it probably doesn't actually add up to an awful lot. But anyway, I like how he's depicted as very much an old man in this. You know, it's easy to forget that he was over 60 in 2018 and Halloween Kills. The fact that he seems to be a much younger person in those two chapters is more down to the fact that he's got all this adrenaline in his body from finally being free from captivity after so long. But add on another 4 years and he's very much into old man territory. He's in the dying embers of his life in Halloween Ends. He can still stand up on 2 feet to do the odd kill, but you can tell he's lacking energy. He just doesn't really have it anymore. But this really makes it believable that he could have a good final fight with Laurie, because I was worried about the prospect of that. You know, is it going to look a little bit silly if this 60-year-old woman is somehow going toe-to-toe with one of the best serial killers of all time? But when you actually get down to it, it is actually very believable, and they do seem very evenly matched. And I just think that final fight is done so well. I got a real buzz out of it. It goes on for just about the right length of time. I think it's choreographed absolutely brilliantly. And I like all the epilogue stuff that comes after it, because you don't always get that in a horror film. Sometimes we get the final skirmish and then it's cut to credits. But we get to see a few glimpses of what the future has in store for the characters. Laurie's presumably going to get with the cop, we think. And Alison moves on to a different life away from Haddonfield, which is kind of nice, albeit we don't really have any idea what she's planning to do outside of Haddonfield. But anyway, I like that they kill Corey at the point of the story that they do. I was a little bit worried that once we got to the end, it would be a case of Corey holding a knife under Alison's chin and holding a gun on Laurie with his other hand, and it would all get a bit too much like Scream. You know, the killer's revealed and then they start talking way too much instead of just killing their potential victims. I thought we might be headed for that, and I wasn't looking forward to it. So when Corey dies, when he does, I loved that. I thought it was a brilliant decision to suddenly bump him off, and then we're very much into the Myers-Laurie struggle. But Corey's pretty good as a killer, especially once he gets the mask. Once he gets the mask, he looks pretty damn intimidating in it. You know, it might not be Myers underneath it, but it's still a hell of a scary look. You know, Myers in his sort of overalls and yeah, I think Corey is pretty good for the majority of this film. There is an interesting scene where he goes into the sewers where Myers is hiding out and decides that he just wants Myers' mask, so just starts grappling with him to get it off him, and he finally succeeds, and then just walks out of the sewers. And I kind of wonder whether this scene is going to go on to be a bit of a hated scene, especially among people who didn't like this film, because Myers is shown to look very weak in this scene. It's a little bit like that scene from Halloween Resurrection when Busta Rhymes just starts talking crap and Myers just ends up walking in the opposite direction. He's seen to look weak in that scene, and he's seen to look weak in this sewer scene. So I just wonder what the future will have in store for this scene. But I really liked it. I just liked how we've got a genuinely old man Myers who is a little bit vulnerable. It just really worked for me. I liked it a lot. My final positive is the music. This film has a number of very well-chosen tunes throughout its runtime, and these songs, they fit their respective scenes absolutely perfectly. I think the soundtrack to this comfortably adds another 5 or 10% to the overall quality of the movie. It's definitely a strength of Halloween Ends, the soundtrack. Overall, I'm a very, very happy man. This was a better film than I expected, and sitting here now, the morning after watching the movie, I'm really thrilled that there's another really good film in my favourite franchise, and I'm definitely looking forward to getting this on Blu-ray when it comes out. I presume it'll be out maybe early next year. I think I'm going to lay off Halloween films until then, and once I get my hands on that Ends disc, I will then do a full 13 film run, I think, over the course of like 2 or 3 weeks. That's going to be a lot of fun. And this time when I get to 2018 and Kills, I'll be able to finish off the proper trilogy then. Don't ask me to do a ranking. I don't think I am going to do a rankings video for the Halloween films after this film, because I did one last year after Halloween Kills. I don't really think anything will really change in that ranking apart from where I would put Ends. Off the top of my head, I think Ends maybe would be at some point halfway up the ranking. Maybe. I don't know. I've not really fully thought about that, but I think I will stay away from doing another Halloween ranking until another film has come out. Once we've got 2 new films to put into a list, I think that's when I would probably go back and redo my list. But for now, let's get to the Bag of Terror and find out what sort of score I'm going to give Halloween Ends. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 bloody axes out of 5. This is an excellent movie. I really enjoyed it. So I guess we will leave it there. Until next time, cheerio, bye-bye.